Welcome to episode 11 of Real, Raw, and Random podcast. I'm Susan.
I'm Millie. No talking today.
You might be down in a minute.
And I am Jordan.
All right, so this coming week is Teacher Appreciation Week, which obviously you guys know, like I was a teacher for many years. And so I kind of want to start that off and just kind of like shout out all of my teacher friends, my former teachers. I know it's a labor of love. It's a lot of work and they're all kind of grinding right now because they're tired at the end of the year. And so there's just a lot that is going on with them. So for anybody in education, not just teachers, anybody in education, you're so appreciated. I still think it's one of the coolest jobs ever, personally. I love it. And there's just been a lot of like memories that have been popping up lately, like how I posted the picture of my classroom. I thought, so I haven't seen that picture since I took it. Like, it's just one of those things that just kind of like sat there. So when I like popped it up, I was like, that's crazy because it was set up exactly as you guys would sit around my desk with the chairs. So I was like, oh, like that was kind of cool.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and then like I sent you a video that popped up from one of our like field trips, and so all those memories like live in my phone, that's a good and a bad thing with Google Photos. Sometimes they give you stuff that you're like, I don't want to remember that. I don't want to see that, but these have been some pretty cool memories. So what do you guys remember from school, the good and the bad? Let's start with, what do we want to start with, the good or the bad?
I feel like the bad, so we can get it over with.
Let's get it over with? Okay,
Yeah.
here's, and I'll obviously share a couple of rough teacher sides, but I guess maybe, what do we consider bad? Like bad experiences, I don't want to say bad teachers, because everybody just kind of like,
It's just bad experiences.
Okay. So
That's
do you
all.
have a specific bad experience that you want? Look at her face. She's already giving up.
Like bad experience with the teacher?
Yeah, or just like in education. Like, I mean, I guess maybe what do you think could have made the experience better for you, or what could have made learning better for you? Because I think maybe that's like a big thing, right? Is that it's so cookie cutter that we know not everybody learns the same way. We know that. So what do you think could have been done to have made your education better?
I would say like a lot of teachers were like really strict sometimes. Like I get the strictness, but like it's okay to like calm down here and there. And I also don't like that like some of the teachers that I had would yap a lot. Like they would talk so much, and it's like I'm more a visual learner. Like you should show me, instead of just like standing there talking for hours.
You're also a hands-on learner though. I think if they have you, once you do it, you're able to apply that. I don't do well with a lot of talking either.
Me neither.
What kind of a learner are you?
I would probably be a hands-on learner also, either like a visual or hands-on. And that's the thing that I think is most important, is just asking like, hey, what type of learner are you guys? And trying to incorporate a little bit of each of those steps of learning into the lesson plan. Because a lot of it was just talking. It just made it easy to get distracted. Yeah. And then especially it's like if you're not like asking leading questions and going a little bit further than what's in the book, then you got a lot of kids just zoning out and not paying attention. And now they're just falling behind.
There's so many classes that I took in high school and even in my undergrad and graduate. Well, my graduate program was really cool. I really liked it. But my undergrad, there were some classes I couldn't tell you one single thing I learned from.
Yeah.
Like, I would just sit there and I would just be like, please stop talking. Like the whole PowerPoint thing, reading off of the PowerPoints and that type of thing. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't, because I prefer to read stuff myself. So when someone's reading to me, I'm like, why are you reading to me? I'm not 5.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so like, I don't know if we did the presentations when you guys were in my classes, but they were the Pechacuchas. And so Lawson and Gabe, who are in New York and they're in school out there. Lawson, I think he texted me maybe it was a month ago. And he always remembers I used to do the image-driven presentations, like 20 and 20. You have to do 20 slides. And you have 20 seconds to explain each slide, and you have 20 slides, and it's only images. It's fully image driven. And so it's funny because I used to tell them, if I can hijack your presentation, you have too many words on the screen. And they'd be like, what does that mean? And I'm like, if I can stand up and I can change your name on your presentation and put my name on it and stand there and
just read from it,
then I can hijack it, then it's not good enough. You're going to fail. And so Lawson reached out to me and he was like, him and Gabe were talking about like, they're like, oh my God, like everyone puts so many words in their presentations. And I mean, they're still using that to this day. And he's like, G helped us out. Like, she like made sure that we understood that, because I drilled it into their heads. That was one of the things that Brownie talks about. One of the times that she had to present in my class, she did not want to do it, because she's shy.
Mhm.
She is, but she isn't. I think she's shy until she gets around the right people, and then she's herself. But she like did not want to do the presentation, and Rand ends up calling me. She goes, Jalen's over here. She's really upset, and doesn't want to do the presentation. She's really nervous. I was like, she has to do it, and she did fine. Like, she did really well. But I mean, I think she was telling me the other day. She was just like, she goes, I hated it. I hated it. I'm like, but you got through it though. You know what I mean? What do you think could have been better school wise? Like, what would have prepared you better for life?
Well, prepared me better for life would probably be just what we were learning about. A lot of the stuff that we learned about in school wasn't applicable to what we do on a daily basis. There wasn't much opportunity for being like learning about what you're interested in specifically. There was only like certain things that you would learn about, especially earlier in my schooling, like middle school and below. It was like that, but high school got a little bit better, especially because like we had personal finance. We learned how to do our taxes in personal finance class. I had all of the business class that I took. I studied like law in high school because we had business law as an elective. It was just a easy like credit because I think it was worth more than one credit. I forgot why I had that class, but
An academic elective, I bet.
yeah, and that was really fun. It was pretty cool. We studied like all of the like liable cases, like why they have the caution hot on the McDonald's cups, because every time you see like a message or a warning like that, 9 times out of 10 it's because they didn't have one at one point,
Right.
and
Well,
they got sued for it.
Yeah, it's a money thing.
But yeah, that's mainly the main thing that could have made it better, was just asking questions about, like, from the teacher's perspective, it would have been nice if they asked more questions about how we learn, what we're interested in, and tried to incorporate that into our lesson plans instead of just reading from a book, because then it's just boring. It's just not interesting. You just zone out. That's when you get more kids talking in the class and shit. All that.
Doing everything but paying attention.
The only other thing I could think of was just being more understanding. Like, some teachers that I dealt with early on were not understanding to, like, maybe this is just harder for me to learn this way. Maybe I get distracted easy. Don't just give me a failing grade and just go on about your business. Like, maybe I need an extra hand. That was kind of rare, few and far between, where I got that type of attention from teachers.
Or even knowing your students enough to know who's going to struggle with what and who's going to have a hard time. So I had a couple of, I had one boy in particular that, remember, we used to always say he's going to be a firefighter. Like, he's like the poster child. You'll remember who I'm talking about here in a minute. He was always doing crazy things. Like, and by crazy, I mean, like, at one point he brought a laser, like a high-powered laser. You know what I'm talking about, right? Yeah. He brought a high-powered laser to school, and so the foam that the laser sat in, he's like, look, and he's like shining it on the thing, and it's burning a hole in the foam. And I was like, you know, you can get in so much trouble for that. And I was like, do not bring that back. But I also knew him well enough that I used to tell everyone he needs to be up and moving every like 10 minutes.
Yeah, or else he'll get bored.
Then he's going to get bored. So I'd be like, hey, I just got, I mean, because we would get like packages, like the chairs, and like if I have even simple things, like if I needed like my screen on my phone like replaced, like the screen protector, I'd be like, hey, can you do this? He'd be like, yeah, and he'd get super excited. Such a smart kid, but teachers wrote him off because they're like, he doesn't sit still, he doesn't focus, and I'm like, it's just because of how he operates. He's so energetic. If you keep his body moving, I think I hear Taco coming.
Really? That's who that was?
Little footsteps.
Okay.
If you keep his body moving, it keeps his brain engaged, and he's better off. So then he would behave for me, and he always thought he was in trouble. And like I would like joke around and be like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Just kidding." Like, but he was always like, "I'm sorry." And just because he was so used to constantly being yelled at. And I'm like, if you really, really paid attention to him, this kid is brilliant. He just needs hands-on stuff to do. You're not going to get him to sit down and listen to you for 15, 20 minutes. It's not going to happen. And he's doing that how many hours a day? And then you expect him to come in here and do the same thing for you? Like, that's not going to happen. You have to find another way to work around that. So I think that knowing your students, I mean, saying all that, it's not easy to do with the, for teachers. I mean, I used to average between 125 to 150 kids a year. And so if you think about how many different personalities and their parents and their needs, and you've got plans and you've got this and you've got that. And so I think any teacher who is able to navigate that world and do it successfully
Mm-hmm.
is amazing. It's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of work.
Yeah.
It is a lot of work. So good.
Yeah. He's like, so he would always do like the stupidest things ever, but he's literally so smart. Like,
He's brilliant.
Mhm.
He's brilliant.
Really
He's
smart.
he's one of those. I have told.
He was just
many
bored,
teachers,
that's all.
I'm like, he
Mhm.
is going to do, if he harnesses that energy in the right direction, he's going to do some amazing things. And they'd be like, no, he's so annoying, and he's so this, and he's so that, and I'd be like, that's the perception you have. This is what I see from him. Tyler, you guys know, obviously, he's like my family, my best
Yeah.
friend. Like, just he's so much to me.
Mhm.
He was one of those kids, constantly in trouble. This boy lived in the hallway, and when he would get kicked out, he would come straight to my class. He'd walk in and be like, hey, and I'd be in the middle of like doing a quick lesson, and I'm like, sit down, just sit down. Like, what'd you do now? And he's like, I don't know. It's like, they just got mad at me. There was one year they were so sick of him. They were like, if your mom approves it, we'll let you go home early 2 weeks. 2 weeks early before the school year ends. We'll
Mhm.
give you all your finals, just because they were so done with him. He's so super successful now. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
like, he didn't follow the path that the amount of teachers that I sat in meetings with, because I mean, I had him as a 6th grader. And then from there, like, he kind of just became a part of my family. Like, when I say like he ended up living with me, like, Sammy would always be like, this is like the brother I didn't know that I was going to have. You know what I mean? And so it was him and other kids that Sammy was friends with, and Sammy's friends were always at the house, but he was so underestimated. And I used to tell everybody, I'm like, he's loud, but if you listen to him, he's saying valuable things. It's just, you don't like how he's saying it, but you have to listen. And they'd be like, no, he's so annoying and he's not going to amount to anything. There was one teacher that he has talked about wanting to reach out to be like, hey, by the way, I just bought a blah, blah, blah house and I'm this successful.
Teacher?
Yeah. And he's just like, I just want to reach out to her and tell her how wrong she was. And I was like, it's not going to serve him anything.
Yeah, it's not worth it.
I was like, your like, or I got you is the fact that you're successful. Like, and he's highly, highly successful. I don't think people understand how high up he is in the company that he's in, and he does so well. So I'm super proud of him, but I've seen people like him where I would stick up for him and teachers would be like, why? And I'm like, because I see something in him that's different. I see a different side of him. He's loud, but he's saying something valuable. He's
Mhm.
saying something that matters, and you're not listening because you're already annoyed with him. And so, yeah, I think that's a big one. I've seen that with several kids who were like, because you guys know, I ended up with like the kids who would get in trouble all the time.
Mhm.
They would send them to my room and I'd be like, just sit down. And I had people who were like, how do you do that? And I'm like, I'm not gonna fight with them. So Tyler will laugh at this story. He walks into my room one day. He was always in my class, always. But this time he was in my class. And so he was in my class in 6th grade, and then I moved to electives. I was teaching technology, and he was in my computer class. He walks into the class, super loud. Hey, oh, Tyler, you guys know him.
Mhm.
Never, that boy will never be quiet in his life. I mean, we're very much alike. Walks in, I'm like, you're disrupting the class. I need you to sit down. And he looks at me, he goes, you're just saying that. You're racist because I'm fat. And I looked at him and I go, that's right. So sit your big ass down. And he goes, and he sat down. So we were in a meeting with his mom and some of the other teachers. And one of the teachers was like, well, one of the things that he brings up a lot is about his weight. And, I feel so bad for him because like, I'm like, no, Tyler, you're beautiful. And you're just such an amazing person. And I love you so much. And I struggle with my weight too. She goes, and he told me, yeah, you are fat. She goes, and he hurt my feelings. And I go, oh, he did that in my classroom too. And then his mom goes, and what did you say to him? I was like, I told him, you are fat, sit down. And his mom started laughing. She goes, that's what he needs. That's what he needs.
Mhm.
Did he ever do that to me in my class again? Never. Because he was looking for the reaction. And I was like, I'm not going to give you the reaction. You come in here, you want to tell me that I think you're fat? Okay, you are fat. Sit your fat ass down. So, and again, I mean, I think that's how we built that rapport, because it's like, I could say something like that, and it's not like he was going to run home and be like, oh my God, because he knew it was out of love.
Mhm.
It's like, you're causing a disruption. Sit down.
Mhm.
Calm down. But I think it's a hard one. It's hard. I think I have a different ability to deal with crazy people because of the people I've dealt with in the past. Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know where that comes from, but
Mhm.
what about good experiences, or like what I know we in the past year talked about Holland,
Mm-hmm.
you know, being someone that was very instrumental and like, I mean, something that you use to this day, which is amazing. Like, what other examples do you have?
The biggest theme with all of the examples that I have is the fact that they actually listened. Like, it wasn't just, I'm telling you to do this, so just do it. It was listening to maybe how I want to learn, like my opinions on what's going on, and taking that and understanding it and then applying that to how you're teaching me. Like, Holland was really good about that. When we had our homeroom in high school, my homeroom teacher was really good with that, Barzagar.
She's amazing.
Barzagar is amazing too, because like she's not, it's a lot of times when people have good experiences with teachers, it's because either they let them do whatever they want, or they were able to just like get away with things.
Yeah.
But Barzagar was the type of teacher that she's not going to let you get away with anything. She's going to school you on it, but she's going to do it out of a place of like, I care about you and I love you, as opposed to I'm just telling you what to do. Just shut the hell up. Like when it was one of the first times we had ever assembled as a homeroom. And when we were in school, like I'm sure it's the same thing with kids in school now, we just used to say stupid stuff.
Yeah.
And we had said, she had caught us saying something like somebody was like, yeah, blah, 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 no homo. And then she was like, hey, she turned around, she snapped around. She was like, don't ever fucking say that. That's not cool. And she just went on about it, like not long, but she was like, that's not cool. That's not okay to say. Find something else to say. That's unnecessary.
And you guys knew that was a limit then in her room.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And not even just a limit. It's just the fact that like, it's not like, okay, I just won't say this here. It's the way that she explained it was, it is wrong to say, I won't say that at all. Then that's okay. I get it now. You taught me something. And the relationship that we were able to grow with her from our freshman year to our senior year was pretty good. It was amazing. Another example of that for me would be a teacher that I had for language arts. I forget what year, but I wasn't doing good in her class. She really focused in on me and wasn't like just giving me failing grades and not seeking to understand and applying that. But then I ended up doing really good in her class after the talks we had together. I was her teacher's assistant for my senior year, I think. And we just had a good rapport. Like I ended up having a good relationship with a lot of teachers in high school, as opposed to the district that I came from before was not that.
Yeah.
Like
Different vibe.
definitely a different vibe. Like it was just, this is a job for me. It was a lot of that behavior. There were some teachers that stuck out there. I remember some of them, but nothing.
Sometimes I think that this is a job for me. It comes from the top down.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and you can attest to this because you were there my last year of teaching,
Mhm.
where it became not necessarily like considered a good thing that I had such a good relationship with all my kids.
Mhm.
Like they were like, there were a lot of people who were threatened by it, who were having issues with it. And I get it. Like there were some things that it was like, okay, like they got to go to class. They got to this, they got to that. But every kid in my room they were good kids. They were all passing their classes. They weren't getting in trouble. They weren't doing things that they weren't supposed, like they were genuinely good kids. And and that's a big part of the reason why I left teaching, was because the entire time I was in education, I was allowed to teach the way that worked for me. And so I think because I taught language arts for 3 years, and then I taught tech the rest of the time, which was video production, sports broadcasting, photography, all that other good stuff. And I built that myself. And so there wasn't a question of what is she doing or why is she, like, I know that there would be people that would walk into my class and be like, oh my gosh, it's chaos. I'm like, but it's organized. I know what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Are they messing around a little bit? Yeah, but we know now, how many takes does it take to get one good solid run?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? On a camera.
Mm-hmm.
And you do end up doing things like, I'm going to lose my mind. I mean, I had that one day in the car, I was like, oh my gosh. And then after I let that out, I was good, but that looks like chaos until you really sit and you're like, oh, okay, they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. My kids never failed at producing what we had to produce. In fact, we always went above and beyond. Like, we had too many people who wanted to show up to the events. Do you remember that? Where I was like, I can't have everybody here. Like, there's not enough room in the press box. There's not enough room, at this event. Like, we have to scale back. And so sometimes I think there's a fear from teachers of, I can't get too close to these kids. Where it became a little bit different for me is because I ended up teaching so many of the like administrators and other teachers' kids in the district that they knew me on a different level. I mean, I'm friends with your mom. You know what I mean? I'm friends with my kids' parents. It's not like I'm just like, oh, I'm close to my kids. I'm close to their parents as well and their families. And I get invited to things and so I built a very different relationship. But I think that sometimes there are some teachers who are so afraid of crossing that line that they stay on the other side of it. And they're like, I would rather just kind of stay as far away from it as possible, because we also hear the bad stories, right? Of teachers that are doing stuff that they shouldn't be doing, that are inappropriate with students. So that's a very real thing. But I think that, one of the first things they say is that you have to build relationships with your kids. That's true in any environment, right? If you're somebody's boss and your employees don't like you, they're not going to stay with you. They're not going to work hard for you. There's that saying that says, you don't quit jobs, you quit bosses. You quit people who you're working for. I quit the person I was working for. The one who was in charge of like watching over the program, because it became an attack. And I was like, I don't have to put up with this. With as much as I do and have done for this district. And you guys are literally like, this person was constantly on me, and then they were talking behind my back, and it became very, for lack of a better word, high school behavior. And I was just like, I'm done. You know how many hours I used to spend at that school. I lived there, and it's like, and then for, all of a sudden, oh, she's great. And then, oh, all the kids want to be in her room. They want to spend time with her. She's not that great. We need to, and then all the rumors and all that stuff started coming out. So I get that side of it. And that's when I was like, I hung on as long as I did for the kids. But beyond that, like I wasn't happy. I've had some amazing administrators, really good people that I worked for, but it was that one last one that I was like, you are listening to everybody else, and it's turned into, it's nonsense. It's ridiculous. But I think it was also timing. It was God's way of saying like, all right, enough. It's time to
something new.
out. Yeah, something different. What's your good experiences?
In middle school, there was this one teacher, my language arts teacher. I don't know if you remember her, but she's like a blonde teacher. She had glasses. She was a language arts teacher. When there was like only part of the middle school, she was in front of Mrs. Weston's class, and like the Air Force section. I'm trying to remember her name. I think something with the S.
In 7th grade?
No, 8th grade. But I had her. She was my language arts teacher, and she was literally like such the sweetest teacher ever. Like, she would always help me if needed, and like, I don't know, she was just like really sweet. And I saw her the other day, and I wanted to say hi to her when I was dropping off my neighbor, but she was literally the most sweetest teacher ever. Like, I don't know, she's very soft spoken and very gentle. She was not like strict, but like, I do remember like having this one bad kid. You always have those bad kids in your class, like just being mean to her, and like I was not rocking with that. So obviously, I spoke up. But yeah, she was just very soft spoken and gentle, and she always had a way with words.
I'm trying to think of who you're talking about.
I know, it's Miss something. I forgot. But she was like very sweet. Another one I liked is Miss Weston. Miss Weston, she kept it real. Like, she
knew her, right?
So funny.
You did it?
I loved her so much. She always kept it real. Like, no matter what, she was not tolerating no funkiness in her classroom. But she was also like funny, but like, if you're doing bad, she'd be like,
Which is cool. Those are always the best.
Exactly.
The other thing that I remember along that lines is all the substitutes that we had. Like, you would have some that you would hear their name. It's like, yeah, so-and-so is going to be substituting for me tomorrow. And be like, oh my God. And then you have the other ones that you would get so excited to see.
Yeah.
Those were pretty cool moments too.
That's true.
A lot of substitutes
did have a good place with the kids.
They get forgotten about a lot sometimes, but there were some pretty cool substitutes that just looked forward to seeing them. They were good at their job. Yeah. Might have been harder for them in some aspects because it's not steady. You're always doing something different, like tossed into something.
Yeah.
And having to deal with like even more kids, because you have certain kids on your roster, but they're going from class to class like a bunch, and depending on who's where, and you never know when you're gonna get hired on, or
That was
when
pretty easy.
they're gonna have to keep you for a long period of time. Like when I was in third grade, we had a teacher that our regular teacher, she fainted in class, and she just never came back. I think she just quit from what I heard. She was okay, but she just was like, yeah, I
She was
can't
just kinda
do
done.
it anymore. And we had a really cool substitute who took that and ran with it. Like she made the best of a bad situation.
Yeah.
They get forgotten about a lot.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, and there's a shortage
Mm-hmm.
because it's not an easy thing to do. I think that people are afraid of kids.
Yeah.
And I think it's funny to me because I'm like, I'm not scared of you. Like I'm not. I'm a grown adult. Like, and I have a different way, I think, with kids. I've handled some pretty, like, what people consider difficult kids. But yeah, I'm not. I always tell people, like, why are you scared of, you're a grown adult.
Yeah, there's nothing to be
Like, why
scared
are you
of.
scared
What
of-
can they?
But I will say this though. As an adult walking into a room full of kids can be intimidating for somebody if they're not used to that, because kids are, you guys know this, you guys are judgmental
Mhm.
as hell.
Yes.
So like the minute that, oh, they say something wrong to this person, or they say something that you just didn't like or you didn't align with, or they are doing something different, I mean, that becomes a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've seen some pretty nice subs get run off because
Oh yeah.
kids they've been rough. So the way that I got started in the district here is I had finished my undergrad and I had graduated. I was teaching for Upward Bound at CSU Pueblo.
Mm-hmm.
And I taught high school health for them. I developed their high school health program. And the program ran pretty late into July. Like the kids got to stay at the college and live there. Like it was a really cool program in the summer. We would take them to the zoo, to the movies. They would get a weekly stipend. So like basically like
Yeah.
just money.
Like
that
an
they could use
allowance.
for like food.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a way to like kind of show them like, hey, this is what college kind of looks like. They got to stay in the dorms. And then like I got hired on as a teacher. I wasn't yet certified, but I got hired on as a teacher because one of my favorite bosses, Mr. Mike, was like, you got a good head on your shoulders. He's like, I want you to do this. And I was like, I teach high school health. And he's like, yeah. He's like, I believe in you. So I did it. So the program was ending and I was like, well, I should probably look and see like what jobs are available, like teaching jobs. And I didn't realize schools started for a lot of districts already by the time that I was applying. So I applied in this district and I applied for, I think, 2 positions, a Spanish teacher and a language arts teacher. I had never been to Fountain ever in my entire life until that day that I came up for an interview. And so I remember I called the number back when they called me for an interview and I was like, is this like this other school? And they're like, no, it's like, we called you from this school. And I was like, oh, okay. So I got hired on 2 weeks after school had started. The teacher who was initially hired, the kids kind of ran her off, and they would tell me stories about how she had all these like little teddy bears on a shelf and she made them all sit in a circle and she handed them each a teddy bear. She's like, you need to come up with a superpower for each one of the bears and then write a story about it. And the kids were like, it was weird. Like she was very obsessed with these bears.
How old were the kids?
6th grade.
Oh wow. Okay.
And so the kids were like, this is really weird. So I came in and they were just like, they had a substitute teacher that was really sweet. She was really good with them. And they had already had like the main teacher and then she quit and then they had another one and she left. And then they had the substitute who was being kind to them. And then here I come, brand new, like
Interrupting
fresh out
that
the
flow.
factory.
Mhm.
Yeah. And so they'd already had all these. And so one of my students who we have a really, really good history and just memories of things that like went on just because of like his life and stuff that he was going through. I remember he was so difficult. Like he was just a hard kid. And like there were like boundaries and lines that like as you become more seasoned, you're like, I can push this a little bit. You know what I mean? And at that point I was just kind of like, why is he being like this? And I was just like, you're so hard. Like, what is wrong with you? And eventually, like, they softened up and he tells me, he goes, do you know what our goal was? He goes, before you came, he goes, the first day you came, I think I had like corrected somebody in class. They were being disrespectful to the sub. And I was like, hey, like, don't do that. That's not okay. And they kind of looked at me like, who are you?
Mhm.
Like, why are you talking to us like that? And he goes, after that, he goes, our goal was to make you quit. he goes, so we were trying to be as difficult as possible. And they were difficult. And then eventually, like, that softened. They got to see me a little bit more. And then I just became that class where they just, like, they wanted to be in all the time. And, like, they were successful in it. And it was funny to hear them say that, though. They were like, we wanted you to quit because we were just tired of it.
Mhm.
And they had that sub, and I remember they just kind of got rid of that sub. So that's how I came into the district. I came in late, like completely late. I didn't have, like, I didn't get to get the classroom ready and get plans to get, like, it was just kind of thrown in, which is how a lot of what I do happens. You know what I mean? It's just like, it's just gets done, and it's kind of God saying, like, do it. But it was stressful. It was crazy.
I also liked, you know who I like, Miss Nieves.
Yeah.
I loved her so much. I used to be so scared of her when I had her class.
Why?
In middle school. I don't know. She just scared me for some reason. Because I think I had her like for a tap class. I'm not sure. But I know I was in a class in middle school. And I know I was also in a class for a science class, I think. If I remember correctly.
I think you were.
Yeah, but I was so scared of her when I first had her class. And then, because I was like, oh my God. I was like, if I don't do this, she's gonna yell at me at that. I was like, and then I was like, I started growing, like, she started growing on me, and like, now she's literally my favorite teacher.
Yeah.
That's usually how it happens. It's like, it starts off like different in a totally different spot, like either out of nerves or out of like, I don't really like you as a teacher. And then a lot of the time, if the teacher is willing to put in the work, you end up having a really good relationship. It's like one of the most memorable ones you'll have.
Well, and I think some of the kids that I've had the better relationship, because Tyler and I, we butted heads at first.
Mhm.
And I mean, there's not a day that goes by I don't speak to him. And this has been for years upon years. I mean, I think at this point, oh my God, 12 years I've known him, 13 years. And for all of those years, he basically was like in my classroom, in my house, with my family. Like, he's a part of my family. But yeah, at first we butted heads. I was just like, what is this kid's issue? Like, what is his deal? But a lot of kids that I had a really hard time with at first, that we kind of butted, and I was like, this kid's gonna hate me. They later on come back and they're like, you were my favorite teacher. You were my absolute favorite teacher. Like, there's nobody else that treated me like you did. Like, there's no comparison. I had somebody reach out to me recently, and he goes, can you believe I'm going to have my second kid? And I was like, that's crazy. And he goes, do you remember how bad I was? He goes, what was wrong with me? And I was like, nothing. You were learning. You were
That's
trying
all.
to figure life out. And he was like, everybody else gave up on me and just kind of threw me away. He goes, and you didn't. He goes, you're the only one who was like, you can stay in my room, but if you act up, I'm kicking you out. Because it's a choice to be in my class. And so, I don't know. I think for me, the teachers that I had that were memorable growing up, my 5th grade teacher was huge. His name was Mr. Shivelhoot. And he was
Mr. what?
Shivelhoot.
Shivelhoot.
He was he was such a unique person. He lived off the grid. He grew his own like vegetables, and like he went hunting for his any of his meat. He had solar, panels on his house, and he was into like model airplanes. And he just happened, we lived at that time, we lived out in the country, and he happened to live like not far from us. And so he would tell like the kids, he'd be like, you guys can come and look at my model airplanes. And like, you'd go into his house and he'd have them all over like just the ceiling. Like he was just in his own world. He also ate a can of sardines every single day for lunch. So like, if you had lunch in his classroom, that's what you smelled. And he'd be like, this is the best food you will ever have. And then he had this trick, I remember, where he had, it was like a jewelry box, like when you just buy regular jewelry, whatever. And he'd be like, I have a human thumb in the box. And we're like, no, you don't. And he'd be like, I do. He's like, I collected it from somewhere, he said. And then he'd be like, go ahead and open it. And so you'd open it.
And it's his thumb.
Yeah, and then you'd be like, oh my gosh, because we were in 5th grade. You'd be like, oh my gosh. And you'd be like, touch it. And then you'd go touch it. And he'd pop the finger up and everyone would freak out. And then you'd go and get other kids to come in and be like, come check this out. He has a human thumb. And knowing that he was going to trick them. He taught us about weather. He taught us about, he had a greenhouse we used to go and grow plants in as 5th graders. He used to tell me he taught all the kids how to play chess, which that's not a typical teacher thing to do. You know what I mean? I was, by the way, the chess champion of the entire 5th grade. I don't remember how, why, but I remember he would encourage me all the time. That was huge for me with him, because he used to say, I actually have like it was on a t-shirt where, you know, when you get your friends to sign your shirt and like, oh, it's having a good year or whatever. And he wrote this note for me and he was like, I expect to hear great things from you in the future. Like, you're going to change the world is what he said to me. And that always stayed with me because I was like, it was so monumental. But he taught in a way that was different than any other teacher that I had.
Mm-hmm.
And then in high school, I had, he was one of the coaches and I ended up being his TA. And I will never forget, like, he knew my home life was not the easiest. And so like he would be like, you did such a good job like helping me with grading my papers and doing this and doing that. And then he'd be like, go this class period and go get something at McDonald's. And like he'd give me money to go get food. And I'd be like, yeah, like that was so nice of him. And then when my dad passed away when I was 16, I just remember everything just being really, really like foggy. Like I couldn't remember people. There were so many people at my dad's funeral, but I remember coming up down the stairs of the church and the very first person I saw was him. And I just remember him being there. And I remember that being such an important thing for me because I was like, none of my other teachers or anybody else even like said anything to me about it. They knew my dad had died. They knew what my family had been through. And he was like there. And then I don't know who it was. I had a feeling it was him, but there was somebody who, after my dad had died as well, they went and they dropped off this basket at my house. It was for my birthday. And they dropped off the basket and it was like cake mix and frosting and balloons and basically everything for like a birthday. And like to this day, like I don't know who genuinely did that. I think it was him and he got like other people to do stuff. But like those are the things that I remember. Like not just the teachers who were like nice to me in class, but the ones who like stepped outside, went above and beyond and did things that were, you know, like more than just like, okay, well, it was cool I had you for that year, but the ones that you can say like I had your support year after year after year, like that was huge to me. And I don't forget those things. I do remember the bad ones too. You know, the ones that I think when we were looking at my yearbooks, my middle school yearbooks, and I remember that one teacher that I was like, she used to yell at us if we had her class right before lunch, and she would yell at us if our stomachs growled. She'd be like, why are you making noise? And we're like, we're just hungry. We're starving. And school back then, it's not like when you guys were in school where you guys are walking around with your Chick-fil-A and your Starbucks and all this other crap. We didn't have that. Like, A, we were poor, and B, like, that just wasn't a thing. The closest fast food place was McDonald's. A lot of us did not eat fast food. Like, it just wasn't like something that we could afford. So like, you had what you had at home, but most kids that I grew up with were eating at school and that was their main meal. And so like, we were like, what is your issue? And kids hated her. All I remember from her class was just feeling just tension, just under pressure all the time. Like, I'm going to say something. She's going to get mad. She's going to yell at me. She's going to yell at this person. And like, you were just bracing yourself for that. So I know that that's like a feeling, a vibe. I mean, I've seen that, unfortunately.
I literally remember, I remember when, what was it? Remember how when the old middle school set up and your class was next to another computer class? I remember how I had the other teacher, and I was so mad because I didn't even have you, because I was in her class instead, and I wanted to be in your class so bad, and like I literally kept trying to sneak in there, and she would always yell at me.
I think at some point word got around because I have a lot of my kids. And Leanna was one of them that had told, I think, Alani. Alani goes, Leanna says she's gonna make sure she gets into your class. And I was like, wait, what? And she goes, yeah. She said she's gonna make it a goal. And she did. She ended up in my class. But I mean, if I would have been able to house more kids, I would have. But I was at capacity in every single. I mean, you remember the after school clubs? That was insane. It was insane. I mean, 50, 60 kids in that room. I remember how hot it was and how loud it was. And I was just like, and that was an every single night thing. So, but I also knew a lot of kids that were there didn't have really anything to go home to. So I'm like 2 hours after school, I'm like, damn, I'm tired. But I'm like, all right, like, this is where I am. This is where I'm going to be. They know they can count on me. I did a lot of stuff outside of school too. I think that's why like the whole leaving teaching it was hard for me because I was like, this has been my life for so long. This is what I know. So leaving that and jumping into another world is kind of like it was difficult. I think even sitting in my office at first, I was like, it's so quiet. I was so used to gammas. And then if I didn't respond, because like, when you're like, mom, 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 and like eventually like your mom tunes you out and it's just like, okay, like you said it enough.
Yeah.
So they would be like, gammas. And I would eventually tune them out and all of a sudden I would hear, Susan. And I'd be like, what? And they would be like, oh, okay, we're trying to get your attention. Going from that and like the constant like, here's what's going on in my life and here's what's happening and this kid has a problem and this has a problem and they want me to go to their game and they want me to go to their choir concert and they're inviting me to their baptism at their church and this and this, and then all of a sudden it was just like silence.
Mm-hmm.
It was weird. I struggled with it. I had a really, really hard time with it because I was like, what do I do with all that energy now? And it was, I think, God saying like, you got to invest in yourself. It's time for you to be still.
God had a plan for you.
Yeah.
And like, don't even start on them field trips. Them field trips were so fun. Like, I mean, really fun. You do not understand. Like, all of us together, like, we would do some of the craziest things ever, like walking around downtown. And like,
or even the when I took you guys in 8th grade to the filming of the was it Natchwitz?
I got a whole jug of juice in a big cup.
I mean, I think it's those things though, or like the presentations. You know what I mean? Like you remember those early mornings, like, and you guys would all be like, "Gamma, so what time do we get here?" And I'm like 6, and you guys are like, "You better be here at 6 because it's cold and we have to wait outside." And you guys would get the custodians to let you in, but yeah, I mean, it's. I think looking back, it's man, it was a labor of love. Mm-hmm. And there's days that I look back and I'm like, I would love to go back. I would like to get back into it. And then there's other days that I'm just like, I think the level of respect that teachers have in society is just, it's embarrassing. Mm-hmm. And we don't pay teachers enough. I don't know any other profession where there's that much scrutiny into what you're doing. If a doctor, misdiagnoses me or doesn't give me the right information, we're not calling and yelling at the doctor. You know what I mean? But the teacher gives an earned grade to a kid and the parent gets pissed off because they have a D or an F and all of a sudden the teacher's the villain and you're having to defend yourself against them. Like, it's hard. It's hard. And as I got further into my career, there weren't parents that were attacking me. Like, my first couple of years, I had a couple of really, really hard parents. I had one mom who was trying to fight me while my kids were in my class. She comes storming down the hall and she's like trying to open my door and wants to fight me. And I'm just standing there smiling at her because I'm like, I'm not scared of you. I had a dad pick up a chair and throw it at me in a meeting one time. Like, he was just really upset because I was like, your son is failing. Like, he needs to come in after school and do work. You're not going to tell me how to raise my kid. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm literally trying to help your kid. I don't want to be here after school either. Mm-hmm. Like, this is not where I want to be. And then I learned eventually, like, how to diffuse those situations where it wasn't as intense. And so I didn't really struggle with parents after several years where it was almost like I had other parents defending me. Like,
because there was that time that, like, remember that one girl's mom, she's like, was like calling you, she was like gonna cuss you out. It was
mm-hmm.
Yeah, and like she was just like, for some reason, I don't know why she turned on you when she literally was in your class in 8th grade.
Oh, she was, yeah. And they would be like, oh, Gambas is my favorite teacher, and then all of a sudden flip. But that's just how people are. You know what I mean? Where I'm like, it doesn't hurt my feelings one way or another. I used to tell the kids when they'd be like, so and so said this about you, and I'm like, okay, maybe I was a bitch to them.
Because her mom was trying to go off on you, like, on the phone. I was like, dang.
Yeah, and I just was like, it is what it is. Like, I'm not gonna worry about it. So it's not gonna be a big deal. I do think it's cool. There's several of my former students who are they're planning to be teachers, and so I would never discourage anybody from doing it because I loved it. But it's changing.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
How does it feel seeing, like, students you've taught, like, growing up, getting married, getting pregnant? Like,
it's surreal. I think that one of the pictures of me when I was a 6th grade teacher. So you guys know, like, I got duct taped to the wall. You know that, right? Okay, so that popped up and I sent it to Anthony and I sent it to Tyler and was just sending it to people that, like, either were there that, would appreciate seeing that. And He was like, you got duct taped to the wall. And I was like, yeah, I did some crazy shit for my kids. Like, in that, it was fun. But those kids are 25, 26 now. And that's crazy to me.
Mhm.
And like seeing them get married and have kids. And I have like 5 graduations, college graduations that I have to go to here in like the next 2 weeks. When I'm so proud of my kids for that. And then even other kids that I know are graduating that are farther away that if I could, I would be there. But it's surreal. It is very surreal because obviously you guys know, like I've known a lot of my kids since they were 11, some of them even younger. Like, I mean, if we think about like Dominic, I met him when he was like 6 or 7. And so, because I taught his sister, I taught, Leanna. And so, like, it was like, I've known you for how long, And so there's that familiarity there. And obviously, building it in the community was just, it was cool. But it's fun. It's neat to see. There's some surprises where I was like, I thought certain people were going to do certain things and they didn't, and vice versa, where I'm just like, you just never know. You never know what's going to happen. But it's also a lot of fun to see my old kids in different professions and different positions and as parents and doing things that I'm just like, I'm so freaking proud of you. Like, it's cool. Like, I saw you as an awkward ass kid, you know what I mean? And now like you're this grown ass adult and you're kicking ass. So yeah, I mean, I think that it's been interesting. Yeah, it's surreal. Like, I told Sammy the other night because he said something about, I don't know if we heard something like in the door. It was something, and then he goes, "Who's there with you?" I don't even know what the conversation was. He goes, "Is Millie there?" And I go, "No." I go, "Why? Why, Sammy?" And he goes, "Well, because there's somebody always there." And I go, "Is it weird that like you're like I have like all of, like my former students, like family basically, that like are still such a big part of my life?" And he goes, "No." I mean, Sammy, if you guys figure, he's watched me teach since he was had my first real teaching job. He was like 6, 7 years old. So he's been used to that like his whole life. But he has said several times where he goes, "I think it would have been more difficult if kids didn't like you." Because then he would have to have defended me against, and you guys know Sammy would have not been okay with someone talking crap about me. But yeah, no. Anyway, I think it's cool. So yeah, shout out to all the teachers that have done, I mean, everybody, whether they're considered, good or bad, but specifically, obviously, the good ones, because, man, I know the hours the teachers put into the stuff, because a lot of times they're having to learn the stuff that they're teaching, too. I had to teach myself. I wasn't in, video production in my undergrad or even my graduate. Like, that wasn't a part of my degree. I just kind of built that in, and I had to teach myself. And then I ended up being able to, like, everyone was like, "How do you get the kids to show up to these events?" I'm like, "Cause they just want to hang out. Like, they want to be a part of it, and they know that I'm gonna hold them to what they need to do, but we're gonna have fun at the same time."
Exactly. That's why I like about your class too, because like we would go around, but you'd be like, "Okay, you guys need to like lock in." Like,
they come to Jesus talks. Like, you better get your shit done.
Even in high school, you were like, you would always be like, "So are you guys still finished?"
Yeah.
And we'd be like, "No," and you'd be like, "Go get it done."
Yeah. I mean, I'd let you guys manage your time.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, like, I think it's so important. So I saw this TikTok, this teacher, I thought it was really cool. He set up his classroom like, just like a restaurant. Very informal. And he had some students pretending to be waiters and waitresses, and he was teaching the boys and the girls, like, how to interact with each other. And I was thinking about that. I'm like, they don't always know that. And so he, like, in the video, he's like, "All right, gentlemen, when you walk in, you pull the chair out for her. Let her sit in the chair. You need to sit on the side where you can face the door, because if something happens, you need to be able to see that and anticipate that." Like, he's basically giving them all these tips. And then he's like, and then he was showing them how to have conversations. And so he was just like, you don't just sit there and be like, "What's your favorite color?" He's like, "That's boring." He's like, build on that conversation. He's like, "Ladies, let the men lead the conversation." So he's teaching them very traditional things. And they did like a quick little interview with the kids at the end of it. And they're like, "What do you guys think?" And he's like, "This is so helpful." Because, like, I didn't know that that's what you're supposed to do. Like, I don't have a dad at home, or my mom doesn't have somebody that is doing that for her. So I would never know that. And it was cool to see that. I was like, I'm glad that there are teachers out there that are doing that type of thing, because you don't know what you don't know. You know what I mean? And so I think with that, that's huge. I wish education did include more real life stuff. You know what I mean? Like, I know you said personal finance. I don't think everybody got the same thing out of personal finance that you did. Because the amount of kids that are like, Gammas, how do I get a credit card? How do I get a where do I get a savings account? How do I invest my money? How do I this? How do I that? The fact that they're asking those questions is impressive, but the fact that coming out of high school, they don't know that's sad. It's sad. And so, that class, I think I think you're the only person I've heard that said that taught you something. Everyone else, I don't know if you took it. Didn't you guys have to take it?
Personal finance?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we did. We had to take it.
I think
because he taught us how to do our taxes. He taught us how to buy a car, how to buy a house, how to apply for a loan.
Yeah.
And in DECA, they taught us how to invest in stocks and stuff. That was pretty cool. We learned about like what penny stocks were, what stocks were in general, like why stocks exist, how do you invest in them. That was pretty cool. We just didn't have the money to play with to invest in them, but yeah, I feel like I learned a lot of cool stuff in high school that I use now. Just that is the rare stuff. That's why I remember it so much. But a lot of it was just unnecessary stuff.
Did you learn? Like, what do you think you took from that?
I feel like personal finance was the only class I actually learned something from, low key. Because like Jordan said, my teacher taught us how to literally do like show us like a W-2, fill in our taxes.
But
like,
you still don't know how to do those things though.
But like I took that information and I did nothing with it. So
but I guess that's my point.
That's the hard part is the fact that a lot of the kids who took that class didn't have to use that stuff for a long time. That's a hard factor with it. That's more of like just circumstance as opposed to how he was teaching it, because I just learned it pretty well. Like it's been a while. Like even when I did my taxes this year, I was like, damn, I don't remember where to start, because he was teaching us a different way. Like it's easier because you can just go on TurboTax and do it, but he was teaching us how to do it yourself, like you do it from scratch. You don't rely on any other thing. Same thing with like financing a house. Like, okay, you have this much you're putting down with 30 or 3% interest. Like how much are you getting? Like that was cool.
Yeah.
It's just if you're in high school, because I definitely didn't take that class my senior year. It would have had to have been my sophomore or junior. So it's like that's years before I start using that shit. That's the only reason I would say that a lot of kids don't talk about it that way, is because we didn't have to use it for a long time.
I think the idea of it is it makes sense.
It just makes more sense.
It's really cool, but I think the application of it is where it's lacking. So, you guys know Vicky, like she taught, so she did, I think it was an elective maybe she might have done where she was doing like a financing with 6th or 7th graders. And the realities that they faced on like how much do groceries really cost. I mean, there was one kid because she was like, you got to pay rent, you got to pay your car payment, you have to pay insurance, you have to pay more. And she did it in a way that was like they were building like rewards in class for it. So it was more like hands-on, like not just let me feed you what's in a textbook, but let's give you a reality check. And I remember one of the kids told her, because she was like, you got to find a place to rent or buy a house. And if you buy a house, you have to have a credit score. And their credit score was based on how much work they did every single week. So it got built up, which I was like, that's really cool. That's fun. That's something you remember. And one kid was like, can I just live in a box? It's too expensive. Like it costs too much money to like, and it is, it's expensive. I mean, if you really look at what the cost of living is right now, it's crazy. It's insane. I mean, I think we all just slowly just allowed or didn't really think about the fact that like a bag of chips went from like $2 to like $5.
Arizona teas went from like 99 cents to like $1.
Yeah.
Or like $2.
Or like even, I mean, I used to buy the gluten-free Oreos. Those used to be like $2.50. They're over $5 now, sometimes more. And it happened in like the matter of like a year and a half. Where all of a sudden it was like, wait a second, I have like 5 items and that's like $40. Like it's crazy. And if you're not careful, you're not paying attention because you don't change your lifestyle.
No.
You continue to do the same thing and then all of a sudden you're like, I don't have as much money in my account. Why? Well, because you're living the same way, but like everything's going up cost-wise. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that there would be a lot more value in doing more realistic type of things. I just don't know where education would have to start with that. Like, where would they even go? I mean, a lot of the stuff that I did in my classes when I would have, when I taught the middle school, we used to do mock interviews, and I used to make them dress up. They used to have to build their resume. There was one student I had who he held the record because I used to like make them print out their resumes, and every resume that they would hand to me, I would go and I would correct, and then I would hand it back to them, and then they would have to fix it, print it again, fix it, print it again. He had the record with like 38 versions. And I was like, you're not gonna stop until it's good. And he's like, is it good now? And I'm like, nope, fix it. And he had such a good resume by the end of it. And then I would invite other like administrators and teachers to come in and sit with me. And then they would have to walk in front of the entire class and interview for their dream job.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had kids who are like, I remember that project because like, I was so nervous, but I remember you being like, you have to be dressed to impress. You have to sit up straight, speak correctly, hold eye contact. Like, those are the things that matter because who is teaching you those things? You know what I mean? It's kind of like a throw you in the deep end, like sink or swim. And so if you're building that into the education system, it just makes more sense. I think we have to get back to some of those basics, like home ec. Like when I was in high school and middle school, we learned how to make like different things. You know what I mean? Like you learn how to cook, you learn how to, and how important is that? Because I know a lot of people who don't know how to cook.
Which I like too, because my mom taught me how to cook many things, which I like too, because I grew up with a mother that has taught me how to cook, like literally cook like dinners and like lunches, mainly dinners though. Because every time she would come home, she'd be like, "Oh, I need you to cook this for me," but I would take like I would watch her cook it 1st. It'd take a couple of tries, but then I would get it on my own. So like whenever she's not home, she would just have me cook it, and I feel like interesting because I know how to cook a lot of things. Shout out to my mother for teaching me, and I also took a culinary class in high school, which was my favorite because I was the only senior in that class. But boy, was I whipping it down. Some of the food low-key I made turned out ass because my freaking teammates, like, they sucked. They kept messing with the ingredients, but low-key, I remember bringing home my mom. What did I bring home my mom? I think some muffins. And I know this one presentation that I liked from a culinary teacher. She had us present like our own marketing, like our own food stands, right? So that was like our finals. So we all had to make our own food stands. And guess what mine was? A taco truck.
Shocking.
And so like, it was actually really interesting. And she basically invited like administrators to come in and try our food. And
dude, there used to be some good food that used to come out of the culinary program. I used to try stuff. I was like, oh my gosh, because they were amazing teachers. I mean, I think the one that you had, I met her, but I didn't get to actually work with her. But chef was, holy cow, his food was insane. So
like the food would be a hit or miss sometimes, not gonna lie. But I remember making these muffins. These muffins were good. And then we also made I remember when we made pancakes the first time. I made like a chocolate chip pancake. That was really good. And those tacos were kind of mid, not gonna lie. But the presentation ate down because I did it. I love designing things. It's so fun.
Yeah. When I was in high school, I think I was like a junior, and I had the biggest crush on the senior that was in culinary class. And because we lived across the street from each other at the time, we'd ride the bus together, and she would always be bringing something from culinary class. And I thought that was so cool. I just didn't have enough free electives ever in high school to take it.
Because DECA was year round, right?
DECA, I always had DECA year round, and I always wanted a PE class, like a weights class. So those two pretty much like took all of my electives. Yeah. And then I had the other ones that you have to take, like swim, Spanish, drama.
No,
oh yeah, they stopped that.
Not trying to do swim,
which that's a disservice.
It is, because it's that's a important skill to have. A lot of kids learned how to swim in that class. I did.
I think it's such a disservice because I think you should have to take automotive. You should have to take industrial arts. You should have to. I feel like there are kids who get stuck in the same electives because they like they're doing. But I know coming up, I had to take industrial arts. I had to take art. I had to take
Okay.
Got me working day and night. Are we recording?
Yes.
All right, we're
Yeah.
back. We had some technical difficulties. But we're back. We're good. We're not really sure. Where did we leave off?
I don't remember.
Anyway, I guess just to kind of sum up, we were talking about teachers and school and education. And so shout out to all the amazing teachers, anyone in education. We know that it's Teacher Appreciation Week, which genuinely there should be appreciation always, not just 1 week.
Definitely.
And so I think that it goes without saying that what you guys do is probably the most invaluable job, I think, ever, because you're shaping the minds of all these young kids and taking care of them and teaching them. And so we appreciate you. I know I do. I have a special place in my heart for teachers and teaching and education, and I absolutely love it. And so shout out to all the teachers. We wish that you guys know that you are loved and appreciated all year long, not just during this coming week. So, yeah.
I can't think of anything else. I don't know if you wanted to talk about anything else at all.
I mean, there was only one other thing that came to mind. I know that I don't know how much time we're in at this point because we kind of like jumped out, but I mean, I think we can probably wrap it up with that and just kind of go into like whatever the next week. I think it's just I just wanted to really mention I know this was always like a significant week for me, and it was always nice to be recognized, but it always felt like it was kind of it was nice, but it was like still it's just not enough, you know what I mean? And so I think teachers deserve a whole lot more than they get. So yeah, I mean, I think like I said, just because we don't know really where we left off, we can wrap it up and then we'll jump into some more stuff next week. So
Okay. That sounds good.
Yeah, sounds good. Anyways, guys, thank you for watching on YouTube, or if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, thank you guys for also listening. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. We like to see and we like to read your feedback and to see if you guys, ask us any questions, or if you want us to answer anything, if you want anything to change. But yes, also give us a rating on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. We'd really appreciate it, guys.
And show your love and support to all the teachers in your kids' lives. Obviously, the teachers you guys have had in the past, like I said, not just this week, but always.
All teachers
make sure that you are not just teachers, educators in general, everyone in education, because paras, I like everyone works so hard, and so make sure that you show that love and you show that appreciation, because it's just not given enough. And so we want to take care of the people who are genuinely making a difference in our world, and that's a lot of the teachers. And again, they just don't get enough recognition. They definitely don't get enough pay, and so make sure you show and share that love with everybody. So
Yes. Okay.
Yep.
all right, we'll see you guys next week. Bye.
Bye, guys.